Trapped inside a burning vehicle with no way out, 3 officers were moments away from death. The fire raged, smoke choking the air, and hope was fading fast. But then, a K-9 named Rex, with unwavering loyalty and sharp instincts, charged into danger. Could this brave dog defy the odds and save them before time ran out? It was a bitter cold day in the woods, the kind where the snow seemed to fall endlessly, muffling all sounds except for the crackling of a distant fire. The forest was silent, peaceful even, but that tranquility was shattered by the sound of a truck engine roaring to life. The vehicle was speeding down a narrow, snow-covered path, only to be abruptly halted by a burst of flames erupting from the engine. Inside the truck, 3 officers, Lieutenant Rodriguez, Officer Carter, and Officer Finch, were trapped. Their hands were tightly bound, ropes digging into their wrists, and the thick smoke that filled the cabin made it nearly impossible to see. The fire was growing by the second, inching closer to the officers, who had no means of freeing themselves, outside. The wind howled, but it did little to dampen the intense heat from the flames creeping up the truck's sides. With every passing second, the situation grew more dire. No one could hear their cries for help. Time was running out. A German shepherd named Rex stood alert, his ears perked up, eyes scanning the surrounding woods. He was no ordinary dog, trained in search and rescue. Rex had been the loyal partner of Officer Carter for years. He had a nose for danger and an instinct that could detect a problem long before anyone else. As the fire raged in the distance, Rex's senses went into overdrive. Something was wrong. He barked sharply, his body tense, as if trying to communicate with his human companions. But no one could hear him, not yet. He knew his team was in trouble, and he wasn't about to stand idle. This time was different. This time, his instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong, and he had to act fast. He paced back and forth, his tail stiff with anxiety, unable to understand why the officers hadn't returned yet. Without hesitation, Rex bolted towards the truck, barking urgently, driven by the bond he shared with his human team. Time was running out, and he knew it. Inside the truck, the officers were growing desperate. The fire was relentless, its crackling intensifying as it engulfed the vehicle. Lieutenant Rodriguez struggled against the ropes, but they were tied too tightly, cutting into his skin. The smoke made it hard to breathe, every inhalation like burning ash in his lungs. He tried to calm his racing heart, but panic was setting in. "We need to get out," he gasped, his voice hoarse. "Now." Officer Finch's face was ashen, his eyes wide with fear. He tried shifting his body, trying to break free from the ropes, but they wouldn't budge. "This is it," he muttered, his voice cracking. The heat was unbearable now, like the very air was on fire. His sweat mixed with the smoke, stinging his eyes. His thoughts raced. How had they ended up like this? How could no one hear their cries for help? Officer Carter, ever the optimist, gritted his teeth and tugged at the ropes one more time. His hands were numb from the strain, but his determination was unwavering. "We're not giving up," he growled through clenched teeth. "We're getting out of this." But with every passing second, the fire crept closer. The heat was becoming unbearable. They needed help, and fast, but it seemed like no one was coming. They were running out of time. Outside, Rex was relentless. His paws crunched in the snow as he sprinted toward the truck, his eyes never leaving the vehicle. He could hear the officers' muffled cries for help, their voices faint beneath the roar of the fire. The closer he got, the more frantic his barking became. His instincts were telling him that his team needed him. They were endangered. As Rex neared the truck, he skidded to a halt, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. The smoke stung his eyes, but he didn't hesitate. He leaped up at the driver's side window, his claws scraping against the metal as he barked louder, hoping his frantic warning would be heard. The fire licked at the edges of the truck, but Rex wasn't afraid. His focus was singular. His officers were trapped. Rex circled the vehicle, scanning for any way in. He barked and whined, scratching at the doors, trying to get the attention of anyone who could hear. His training had prepared him for dangerous situations, but this was different. This wasn't a missing person or a criminal to track down. This was life or death. Suddenly, his ears pricked up as he heard a faint rustling from inside the truck. One of the officers was trying to move, trying to break free from the ropes. Rex's tail wagged with renewed hope. He stood tall, his body tense with energy, and with a deep breath, he jumped toward the door, pushing his snout against the handle, urging it to open. For a brief moment, the door creaked. Rex barked louder, his patience paying off. The officer was free, just one hand, but it was enough to give them a chance. Rex knew he couldn't stop now. The fire was closing in, but he wouldn't let them die. Inside the truck, the heat was unbearable. Lieutenant Rodriguez's face was dripping with sweat, and he could feel the fire's breath against his skin. "We don't have much time," he shouted, his voice strained with panic. Officer Finch's face twisted in pain, his hands still bound, struggling against the ropes. The smoke was thick now, and every breath was a fight to keep from choking. They had no tools to cut the ropes, no way to escape. But then, a miracle. They heard a sudden rattle from the door. It was faint, but it was enough to spark a flicker of hope in their hearts. Rex's barking was growing louder, more urgent. He was outside. He was trying to help. Officer Carter, heart pounding, managed to pull his hand free from the ropes. He let out a shaky breath, staring at the now loose knot. "I got it," he said, barely believing his own words. He worked quickly, tugging at the ropes with frantic precision. "I can get us out of here." The heat was unbearable now. The fire had spread along the sides of the truck, inching closer with every passing second. Carter helped Finch free his hands, their movements clumsy with the exhaustion and smoke searing their lungs. But then, as if guided by an unseen force, they managed to yank open the truck door. Just as they crawled out, the truck creaked and groaned under the weight of the flames. And then, Rex was there, right beside them, guiding them away from the fire, his instincts still sharp, his mission clear, to save them. Moments later, the fire trucks roared to the scene, their sirens blaring through the woods. Firefighters rushed toward the burning wreckage, extinguishing the flames that still licked at the truck's charred remains. But the officers, Lieutenant Rodriguez, Officer Carter, and Officer Finch, were safe. They were shaken, covered in soot, but alive. The paramedics quickly took over, checking their vitals, making sure they weren't suffering from smoke inhalation or burns. But they were all intact, thanks to their brave canine partner. Rex stood nearby, panting heavily, his body covered in snow but his eyes still alert. He had stayed by their side, never wavering, never giving up. The officers' voices were weak but filled with gratitude. "He saved us," Officer Finch muttered, his eyes fixed on Rex. "Without him, we'd be gone." Rex gave a soft, tired whine, as if to acknowledge their words. He didn't need praise. He had done his job. His loyalty had saved their lives. As the fire trucks finished their work and the scene began to settle, the officers sat side by side on the snow, still in disbelief. Their minds raced, replaying the events. It wasn't just luck that had kept them alive. It was the bond they shared with Rex, their canine partner. A bond that went beyond training and duty. "Sometimes, heroes come in unexpected forms," Lt. Rodriguez said, his voice hoarse, but filled with awe. Rex didn't hesitate. He just knew. The officers, still shaken but now safe, looked down at their four-legged hero. Rex had proven that bravery and loyalty didn't come with a uniform. He had saved their lives when they thought there was no hope left. As they stood to leave, an officer approached with a small note from the paramedics. It was from Rex's handler, Officer Carter. It simply read, "Tell the dog, he's our angel." Rex wagged his tail gently, his head held high. He had done his job, and done it well.